Welcome back, guys. In this lesson, we'll be exploring how we delete data through our API. So I've already actually created this action. If you want, you can pause and attempt it. So I'm giving you a sneak preview as to what it needs to look like, at least initially. The verb is HTTP delete. We need to let it know that it should expect some parameter in the form of ID as an integer. We authorize it. This is another one that you probably want to enforce a role for administrator because we're deleting. Otherwise, you can just leave it as authorized. And we know that the response codes here would be 400, 204, and 500. So you can pause and attempt it, and then we can compare notes. So what I have in this delete hotel action is a validation to make sure that the ID value makes sense. That's number one. So we do that, and then we reject it as a bad request if it doesn't make sense. Then I go on to try. We know that our catch is already logging and returning a status code, of 500. But then when it tries the operation, what it does is it retrieves the hotel with the ID that was passed in. We check if that hotel exists. Otherwise, we once again say bad request and log the error. Otherwise, we go on to delete the hotel and save our changes, then return no content. So you see, there wasn't really much to deleting the hotel. So the same holds true for the country. It's pretty much the same method. We have the delete country, we have the same statuses. If you want to extend the same permissions accordingly, and we go through, we get the ID, we verify that the value makes sense, and then we try the operation, getting the country, validating that it is not a fake number, and then going ahead and deleting it. If it gets this far, we return a no content of 204. So what we want to do is test deleting a hotel versus testing deleting a country, and then you're going to see why I'm placing emphasis on those two tests. So with the introduction of the delete endpoint, Swagger gets a bit more colorful. We see delete being promoted here. And what we're going to do is use postman and attempt our delete. So you have the endpoint. We need the ID value in the URL. We're going to choose our verb as delete. All right. And what I'm going to do is choose a hotel that I really don't want, right? So I think this one was just a random test. You see it's still saying string, just like the default values that are in the payload example. So I'm going to delete hotel with the ID number 5. So in my delete request, I put in the URL /5 and then send. Of course, I need to authorize. So let me backtrack a bit and try and get a token. There we go. All right, here's a token. Grab the token, jump over, authorization, bearer token. There we go, send, and we get a no content. So if I look back at the list, I shouldn't see the hotel with ID 5. There it is, it goes 4, then 6. So 5 is gone. Now that is how we would delete a hotel. Now the thing with the country is that the country has hotels. So it's a bit riskier when we delete a country that we're actually going to have to remove the hotels also. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to say country. And looking back, I see that we have 2 in Cayman and we have, let's say we have 1 in Bahamas. So let's try and delete the country of Bahamas. It only has 1 hotel, so we'll just bite the bullet and make the sacrifice with that one, right? We can always add it back later on. So what I'm going to do is say country with the ID 3 and go over here, put that there, all right, ID 3, and then send. and we see we're getting a no content. So if I look at the list of countries, let me look at the list of countries. I shouldn't see, oh, I deleted Cayman. All right, that's fine. So I deleted Cayman. So now we only have two countries, 1 and 2. I thought I was deleting Bahamas. Apologies. So that means none of the hotels that have ID value 3 should be there. So let me send, and there it is. So we have country with the ID 1, country with ID 2, country with ID 1, 1, etc. So no country with ID 3 remains. And that's because in our migration, when we created the database, so you can go to the first migration file, I called it database created. You'll see in the configuration that the constraint on the foreign key was that it said referential action dot cascade. So cascade means that if you make any change to the parent, meaning country, so you have country being the parent and hotels are in a country, so they are the children records. If you make any change to the country record, it would reflect on the hotels. So in this case, the change we're making is that we're deleting the parent record. So it's saying on delete, I want a cascade, meaning whatever you do to the parent, replicate that action across the child. So this can actually be changed, but then you would have to make the modification in the context file and then run another migration for it to know that you want no action or to restrict, meaning, and I usually do a restrict, because if there are children records, I don't want to delete the parent. So that means once there are hotels associated with this country, you cannot delete the country. That's what restrict would do. However, right now it's on cascade, and like you see, when you delete that parent record, it's going to cascade across all the hotels. So you have to be careful with that. Make sure that if that configuration obtains in your API, it is deliberate. That is how you want it to work. But this is something that can cause massive data loss if it goes untethered.